I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Season 7, Episode 6 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, scheduled to come out on May 6th, 2024. Just to let you know, I'll be at Lacuna Coil May 7th in Charlotte. So, if anybody's there, you can say hi to me. Otherwise, I hope other people enjoy Lacuna Coil as much as I do. We're going to be talking about Tesla and some of their problems that they're having with their company now, using Copilot to make topics for our podcast, and then Fallout, because we were supposed to talk about Fallout last time, but we talked a long time about morals and banning apps. But to start with, we are going to talk about this Dig American Dry Stout by Brewery Bhavana. It's a 6.4% ABV American Dry Stout. And they say it's the chocolate character in this complex stout comes entirely from black patent and chocolate malts. Usually dry and fruity for the style, it pairs with earthy, peppery flavor of rye and the deep, dark flavors of dried fruit. And I got it because it said it paired with rye. Mm-hmm. So I was planning on, I think, in the last episode So last year I planned on having this with some whiskey, mm-hmm. and I just realized it. That was the whole point, because it said it paired well with rye. I was going to get a rye whiskey. We were going to have some with it, but you kept saying no. So it never happened.
Having tasted it, I will give you, I do believe it would pair well with rye.
Okay.
However, its primary flavor is brown. Here's what I'll give them. I think maybe their description's a little optimistic with some of the fruity flavors and stuff like that. But it does taste like if you took the just pure cocoa powder, not even made into chocolate yet, and you put it in some just plain black coffee. There definitely is chocolate notes. There definitely are coffee notes. But that's about it. Now, it might change as we let it warm up, but it's also very highly carbonated. I put it in my mouth, and it was liquid going in, foam while it was in there.
I'm sorry for everyone. Ricky is cracking me up today about this beer, and I laughed so close to the mic. I normally turn my head. So I'm sorry about the last one. I'll try to mute that down a little bit. If not, hopefully I didn't blow your eardrums out. All right, I got to try this again because I've lost all my tasting notes.
You're good. Yeah, I'll say, I don't think it's brewed badly. There's no off flavors, anything like that. It's just definitely not for me. As a pairing with something kind of like rye, yeah, I could see it. And if you're somebody who, really likes a dry beer, you don't like any sweet flavors or anything like that at all in your alcohol, yeah, that could go well with you. I could also see it, there's occasionally cocktails that you put beer in. Mm-hmm. If you were going to do some sort of beer old fashioned,
like an Irish car bomb or something like that.
Something like that could definitely work.
Yeah.
But it's not a beer I would voluntarily get a glass of.
So this is where we differ on stouts, because I would go back to this beer every single time.
Okay.
And this is why. It's dark chocolate. When it sets on the tongue, and the aftertaste has a kind of smoky, cigar-y kind of bitterness to it. I agree that what they're saying on the can, and it may be because it's a year old.
It's true.
What they're saying on the can is not what's portrayed in the glass. Now, that could come out as it warms up, so we're going to let it warm up. So hold your... If you're just listening to this now, the review for this beer is not over with. We have to do it at the end of the podcast. But I would drink this all the time.
Okay.
And this is why. This is the sort of thing that if you... Number one, I'd marinate a steak in it. And then I would cook that steak. And then I would have this beer with that steak and a cigar. and maybe a glass of whiskey, too. On one of those very indulgent days where Joe is just not worried about having a heart attack. He's I ran this morning. I worked out yesterday. I'm working out tomorrow. I've been pumping, doing my HIIT and all that other stuff. and I'm just going to have something that is like a relax. I'm going to sit in a jacuzzi. I'm going to eat a steak. I'm going to have a beer, and I'm going to have some rye whiskey.
Yeah.
This is what I would, and smoke a cigar. This is what I would pair with that. If I wanted coffee in the morning and I wanted something that fit the bitterness and the blackness of my soul, this is the beer that I'd choose. Normally it'd be a Guinness, but this is the one that I choose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that it's a great beer. It's that if you're looking for that particular thing, it fits.
Well, yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head from my earlier comment that, like, this is not a badly brewed beer. This is not a beer I enjoy. But there's definitely, if those tasting notes have sounded good to you, you will probably enjoy it. Because it is, what flavors it has are pronounced. If you like that kind of, I don't even say muted, like if you just really like a very dark chocolate or like a coffee type flavor in a stout that doesn't have a lot else going on, yeah, boom, that's it.
So I did just have a sip of coffee with this, and the coffee brought out all the notes that are like the dark chocolate, the flavors of cigar and leather and things like that. So it definitely, I could see with a rye you would get, like if you paired it with rye whiskey, how it would like bring out some like fruitier notes and stuff like that, because rye's going to have that. All right, so if you don't like those things, don't get this beer. Basically, is what it comes down to. But we'll come back at the end of the podcast and we'll talk about whether or not it gets better as it warms up. So let's talk about Tesla cells slumping. Now, I don't have any like the last one I had opinions on and stuff like that. I don't have any opinions on this one. So you're going to carry the weight on this one.
Sure. Here's where I'll carry the weight. I think Tesla was the first to the market with a very well functioning automated car. I'm not going to say self-driving because there's several instances you don't want it to self-drive.
Yeah.
Like that technology is just not there yet unless you live in very particularly well-mapped areas that you can do something like that. But they were the first to market with some really groundbreaking technology. But they have kind of stumbled in the same place that most like breakthrough technologies do, is to get it cheap enough into the average person's hands. With places like Ford and Toyota and all these other places coming with, granted, not as good self-driving capabilities, but some self-driving, assistive capabilities at a much, much cheaper price point. I think this was probably inevitable.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about self-driving, just to put a note there, the average person does not trust it.
Oh no, yeah, the technology's not there. That's why I said you can say it's self-driving because it can't technically drive itself, but there's very few instances where that would be safe, and there's really no instances that would be legal to be completely self-driving. There always needs to be a driver in the car with it, and maybe that technology will get there someday. I don't think it will with their current technology sets, as we've seen many times over. Relying mostly on cameras and sensors is very difficult because so much of it is car maintenance, so much of it is road maintenance, so much of it is conditions you're driving in. But that conversation's been happening for a long time, that a full true self-driving vehicle is probably still,
sorry everybody,
you're good, it's probably still a technology or two away, right? The stuff we have right now won't get us there, but I cannot deny there are some great capabilities now of like lane assistance and detections, and it's much easier to drive a brand new car with all these features than it is an older car in terms of safety and stuff. That's all great. Not disparaging the work Tesla has done. But you're not going to get a huge chunk of the market share until you can put a car out that's $25,000 to $30,000 new, $15,000 used.
Yeah.
Because that's what the average American drives.
And, that it still functions with a working battery.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that. They've just recently recalled all the Cybertrucks and stuff like that. That's, again, I think a problem of economy at scale.
Yeah.
You're not making enough of these things. Your supply chain, your testing isn't quite good enough. And that's always going to be their problem, I think, when it is a huge luxury item, because I can't even say that they're not necessarily a huge luxury item. And I think that's also part of the problem. When your car costs $200,000 and it doesn't actually cost anywhere close to $200,000 to make, so if something's wrong with it, your policy can just be, I will send you a brand new car. You know, that's fine. You don't see people with, these super fancy cars having to worry about that type of thing. They got the money to worry through it. Sure, the monthly, yearly maintenance is absolutely killer, but they could afford the car to begin with. They can afford the maintenance. You got to get a budget sedan out there that the average Joe can say it's either this or whatever Ford just pushed out.
Yep.
And when you're in that situation with that kind of maybe brand recognition, maybe you could do it. But when it becomes, I could have this Ford right here that does maybe half of what you do, or I could pay double that price to have your product. Frankly, double the price is just out of the budget for most people.
Yeah. And also, like, forget idealism and all that other stuff, because I will absolutely go down that moral imperative like track if we keep talking about that.
Yeah.
And you know where that goes. That was the last episode. But the average person just can't afford it.
Yeah.
They can't afford it. They can't afford to be that idealistic. They don't live in that sort of world. And all the solutions that Musk and all the other people are talking about doing are things like, well, we're just going to take this fleet of cars and we're going to use the processing chips inside of them to, do AI modeling and stuff like that. And that's great, but what?
Well, there's some problems about that, right? Like, this can tie back into an episode we had a little while back. Facebook is making tons of money selling your data to AI stuff, even doing some of its own AI stuff. And oh man, we're gonna go through with this next episode. I've got an idea for a topic I meant to talk to you about but didn't. It's Facebook related, but so spoilers. Facebook next episode. But yeah, so the benefit of having something like that, I got all these chips in these cars that can collect data and help make our product better, is having enough people using your product to amass a large amount of data. The cost of these cars is not as big a deal to the people in the tech hubs and the places that you're already popular. You already have those cities mapped out really well. You're already getting their data. You need somebody who's like, hey, I live in some much smaller metropolitan somewhere. Like, but hey, I'd love a fully electric car. I'd love that little brand because it's kind of like a status symbol. I'd love to have that over a Ford. And now you're starting to get data from my city. And now, especially because especially as you go east into the U.S., you talk about the East Coast, there's a lot of funky terrain stuff because you've got cities that were originally built for people, then horses, then cars, right? Not these square cities. You've got hey, yeah, this is a 2-lane, then a 1-lane for like a mile, and then back to a 2-lane, then a 4-lane, then back to a 1-lane. These things go crazy and these little loops and stuff. That would be great data to have because you can, even if you were, again, you're not offering full self-driving. You're offering, the best of the safety stuff and the best of the sensor stuff. And you're just soaking up all that data from these people that have been driving on these roads their whole life. Like, long run, that has to be so much better for you because you want to get where they really need to be is, hey, we make our car and we also have our algorithm, our model. And if Ford, you want to make a self-driving car, that's cool. For $5,000 for every vehicle, I will give you my model. And then they run the software, right? Yeah. The hardware is great to have. They'll still always have their luxury line. But that's a very profitable way forward for them.
Isn't that kind of what Apple and Google did with CarPlay and Android Auto?
Yeah, it's exactly what a lot of these software companies try and do for their things. And from what I can tell, they're not doing it. Even though they were so early into the market. I mean, in all honesty, it might be too late to do stuff like that now as these other brands have started to figure things out.
When they started trying to charge for the models and stuff like that, or like improving them, because you do have to pay for those things, I think, for the car. Like Toyota is just like, no, we're going to do our own infotainment system now.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to have that cost.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. If you had been good enough before then, it wouldn't even been a question.
I don't know. Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are pretty good for what we've got right now.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying those are bad. What I'm saying is if Tesla had been better, they wouldn't have made that decision.
Yes, I get what you're saying. But so Tesla never used CarPlay or Android Auto. They have their own thing that hooks into the phones and it uses their like own navigation system and all this other stuff. And while it's cool, like I mean, I've been in a couple of them for like Uber drives and stuff like that, and I've test driven one before. While it's cool, it's not. I kind of prefer my 2008 Highlander that I'm going to put a new like Kenwood stereo system into and use the very nice speakers that I put in there. Like I kind of prefer that like to a fancy thing that a Toyota's going to quit supporting in 2029 or 2020 2030 or whatever, and I'm not going to be able to continue driving that car using my cell phone as a attachment to it.
No, you're right. That's its own problem with cars right now, is that it does feel like there's almost becoming subscription planned obsolete that happening in vehicles.
Yeah.
Because, I think my newest car I've ever driven was like a 2012. That's the one I've got right now.
Yeah.
That's a 12-year-old car. And we'll probably be looking at getting a new one next year or the year after. And that question has come up to me. And it's like, if I buy a brand new car, it's got all these great bells and whistles, which are great. They're great bells and whistles. But 5 years from now, am I going to have to get another car because this one's not supported? Because it, and this is maybe, man, we're going back to a lot of old topics. We talked about like the self-cannibalization of AI, of that, like as AI is doing more things, fewer humans are doing it. Does that, one, hamper the AI, and two, make humans worse at what they're doing? If you spend 5 years driving a car that automates a lot of functions for you, that's great, that's safe. Those 5 years are up. Are you a worse driver going manually? Like, are you now almost needing those features to be as safe on the road as you were before you had them? There's no answer to that question because we're not there yet. But that's something to think about.
I would say, based off of things that I've seen with being able to research and stuff like that, I was a master of researching for papers when I was in high school and college, because it wasn't a university then. It was a college.
Yeah.
When I was going through those two programs, I was good at that stuff, and I made great papers. I struggle to do that now.
Yeah. Search engines are much worse for that stuff than they used to be.
Well, no, it's not that. It's that I've relied on these tools that are supposed to make it better, and those tools have not gotten better. They've gotten worse, but I've also lost that skill set. Driving is a skill set.
Yeah, I see where you're getting at.
Yeah.
It's like the tool can be worse now, but there's also some just natural ability that's been lost.
So if I went back to do that, while I could and I do like recall those things eventually, it's like I have a ramp up time.
Yep.
And so you have to keep that in mind if you're gonna start doing this like self-driving stuff and everything like that. That's great. That might be really good for seniors. It's definitely not good for people that are just learning how to drive.
That's also a really good argument. If you're driving one of those cars from the day you start driving, how much are you reliant on you're starting to go over the line to get a little beat?
Yep.
And then again, we're not going to talk about morals again this episode. But I will say that is a very good argument for when we think about vehicle safety.
Yep.
I think we look at the vehicles a lot. We say, what safety features do you have? And I don't think anyone can deny that your car letting you know when you're crossing a lane it doesn't think you're supposed to be, to give you a warning about that. That's a great thing.
I can hear my boss saying, but it makes it safer, and it's the thing that's the right thing to do because it's politically correct and all blah, 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 blah. I can hear him saying it, like that argument on the other end of my head. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was thinking that like...
No, you're right. It is, no one can really argue that's a good thing in the short term. But like what is that going to mean in 10 years. If you start driving at 16, now you're 26, you've gotten into your driving habits, and now you got to get a rental car or something else has happened and you don't have those features anymore. Are you now a reckless driver?
Yeah, there definitely would be reckless drivers because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's reckless drivers today. The question is, does it get worse?
But
Are we going to see higher
but I
rates
think
of
that we can
accidents?
look at other things and see that absolutely would happen if what we suddenly stopped using these tools. So now we become dependent on them,
Mhm.
and then those are subscription based, so you can't stop using them. So it's like a way of taxing the it is a way of cost modeling people into dependency.
Yeah,
It's
and
almost like a addiction.
yeah, and where it'll be really interesting is when those things start to happen, right? So, a lot of things that get corrected in the world are through the legal system, and what's going to happen the first time someone's safety feature got turned off because they didn't fulfill their subscription,
Hmm.
and they or someone else died on the road.
Yep, that's going to be a thing, and it's either going to swing to, and I would be willing to bet that one of these companies is going to be able to say, well, that's on the person
Yeah,
because
I mean, that will certainly be their argument.
yeah,
Same way as we've had arguments from car manufacturers from other safety features that turned out not to be safe and things like that. But I'm just saying, somewhere 2030s probably, we're going to have something in front of the
hmm
Supreme Court about if you disable a safety feature that a person is used to, is it reasonable to then blame them for getting hurt when they didn't have it?
yep.
You know?
And I think in the past we've erred on that's the manufacturer's problem, but now it's going to be, well, you didn't pay your subscription, so that's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
It just feels it. I actually intended for this just to be more about finances.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah. Okay.
now, well, it's okay. We can stop. I'm
Next
depressed.
topic.
But just to end it, um, it is Tesla's sales are just indicative of a company like Fisker or any of these other like starting companies that just don't know how to do something. They say that they're going to do something that is innovative and is disruptive, but the only real, like, the reason that things exist the way that they are is because we've had these like giants that have gone into the industry and they've kind of figured out how this works. And if you don't recognize that, then you end up just recreating the same thing over again with more steps. And that's kind of what Tesla's done. They're talking about all these other solutions to keep themselves profitable and keep their investors happy and stuff like that. And they're not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of squandered their tech gap.
Yeah.
Again, you can only be the luxury for as long as you can do something no one else can. As soon as someone can do it, not as well, but cheaper, you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in cars. I mean, the Pinto.
Yeah.
Right? Like, terrible reputation, but it was cheap, so it was everywhere.
Everywhere. And they're still on the road, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So before I move on to the next topic, I put some coffee in this.
Mm-hmm. Good with coffee?
That's good. Yeah. Put some coffee in the dig.
Little coffee cocktail?
It's probably like a splash of coffee and cream in there. Yeah. With maybe a quarter of an ounce of the dig. So
Okay.
a splash of coffee and cream, maybe a quarter of a teaspoon, And I normally measure out my coffee and cream, so like 16 ounces to about 2 tablespoons of cream. That normally is pretty on point for me. So let's talk about, I created a topic for this episode that is AI generated. Now, I just went in and I have like the last bit of the transcript that I had with it. I couldn't get it to give me the whole thing because for whatever reason, Bing doesn't want to do this. But I went into Bing, I used Copilot, and I said, hey, help me come up with a topic for my podcast. I want to talk about AI. What are some good AI topics? And it gave me like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, okay, give me an article about AI and creativity. And I got an article from New Republic about how AI is destroying writers
Mm.
because people can't like write cheap stuff anymore
Yeah.
to sell because it's all AI generated.
Mm.
So the articles, like everything's pinned in there. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Like,
I mean, I think that's very valid. And we kind of talked about this again, either this season or last season. We we can't expect basically high quality professional work if we do not support lower quality learning work.
yeah,
So it is very attractive to say, hey, I need a bunch of maybe 1 page articles that are maybe not too heavily researched about various topics to drive generation to my website. That's great. That person probably never has a need for large scale professional work. And so it makes sense for them to use AI to do that from a financial sense. But just like if you use, writing too much, or not writing, paintings to generate your image AI, and then people stop making painting for the things you want. Like I'm thinking you see a lot of AI stuff for like D&D profile pictures and little character OCs and stuff like that. That's ultimately taking away practice and monetization from people who could eventually develop the skills to do the larger work.
Yep.
Unless you are just obscenely talented, the first thing you write is probably not a New York bestseller. The first thing you write is not going to win the Pulitzer Prize.
Even if you are obscenely talented, generally the first thing that you write is not going to be either of those things.
Exactly. So at some point, and who knows what that point is, if you have AI doing all of your quote unquote easy stuff, just like what we talked about a minute ago with the cars and driving, we've talked about things in the service industry with self checkouts and stuff. Eventually, your people who are not the top 0.1% of people, or maybe even 0.001% of people, that just are an immediate success the first thing they ever do, how are those people supposed to support themselves and get better so that they can move on to larger things?
I agree. I think also, so yes to everything that you just said. Like AI is great, but it should be a tool to use to assist the people that are learning to do things, not a tool that is used to replace them.
Yeah, I mean, flip this topic in your head. Think about, okay, maybe I'm a writer, and maybe I outsource my services, and I say I can generate you with my little AI tool, 1 to 2 page write ups on any topic you want. It'll scan the internet, it'll make them for you, and I can press a button, and that just happens. Cool. You've got your website, you've made your money. You can keep doing that forever. Maybe you have to keep training your model so it's as good as the other models to stay competitive. But imagine instead, you're a writer, you write that 1 to 2 pages, and you click that button, and instead, your AI is just a very comprehensive editor who goes through chat style and is like, okay, hey, you've got this line right here. I've detected these problems with it. Here's what I think you could do better. And instead of just changing it, explains it to you. And is being more of a mentor, being able to gather more information. You as a writer get better.
I think that's good. I think the problem is, so like my wife does editing for work, right? That requires a certain skill set that requires a lot of knowledge, that while I know that AI can garner that stuff, it doesn't really think in the same way that like a human does. And until we get to that point, it's not going to be able to do that job at the same competency level.
Oh, definitely. It wouldn't be able to. A real editor will always be better. But at the same time, your wife as an editor could have her little edit bot that helps double check her work and say, oh, hey, I noticed this small thing here.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, just recently this new format was released. Would you like to try it? Something like that. When you see them as assistive tools, they become about boosting people up and helping them gain proficiency faster. When you use them as flat out replacements, you break the chain of progression. So like at some point...
I see what you were saying. Yeah, completely agree on that.
Yeah, at some point, the more things we automate, we're going to start finding, man, we have fewer actual experts in these things.
Now, I use this to generate, just be like, hey, go and do this web search. Find me a topic so that I can like peruse through like a list of 5. Give me 5 choices so I don't have to spend an hour doing this.
Yeah.
I think that's the proper way to use AI stuff.
And I don't know if we've talked about it, but I certainly, the last time I talked to my dad, talked about this pretty extensively, that I think that is really the ultimate use case for AI, is assistants that can do something you can already do, but will do it a bit faster. Like when I can say, you know, okay, AI bot, I'm walking out the door, I got to go pick up groceries, but I need a doctor's appointment tomorrow in the afternoon. Set that up for me. And I can walk away and it can do that. That's awesome. That's enriched my life. It's not replacing some function that's going to potentially hurt somebody. It's making my life easier.
It just made it so that I could say a word and I didn't have to do that task that needed to be done.
Yeah, because realistically, you know, I don't know exactly how you research the podcast, but I would assume you come up with a general idea of like, I kind of want to talk about what's happening in X industry, and you just start Googling. You're running searches of like what's happening right now, what's popular.
So
and I can do that for you.
Yeah, that is exactly how I do certain things, and then other things I throughout the week and the month and everything, I'll like watch the news and I'll read stuff and things like that, and then I'll write those notes down and then I'll put them in. The AI can't do that because that's like an amalgamation of like a bunch of different things that come together. But like when I've got to a point like this where I'm like, I would like to have one more topic. How do I find that other topic? And I don't want to spend an hour, you know, doing that. It can do that. Absolutely. Because I tried both.
Yeah.
And it failed at the first. It did do well with the, it did well with the second. So like I know absolutely it doesn't do very well with the second one. I do want to hit this Fallout Next Gen patch thing before we go, and I know that's going to push us over our 1 o'clock deadline for D&D, so we're sacrificing D&D time for you guys, but they'll just be doing the recap anyway, so it'll be all right. Tell me what you think about the Next Gen patch, because I have thoughts about it.
I think Bethesda finds themselves in an incredibly difficult position where they want to continue to refine their product, which as artists is their right, especially in a digital world. They want to keep trying to make it better. You know, you can argue whether or not they succeed on that, but they are trying to refine their product. However, the users of their product are also, on average, users of other utilities that are dependent on software version.
Yep.
The thing that always destroys for all these patches is the script extenders, because as Bethesda goes in and adds new functionalities to the original scripts, it messes with the allocations in the script extenders. So those always have to be rewritten. That's like a third-party thing that people have to wait on, and that really, really sucks for the people playing it. And so part of me wants to say, Bethesda, just stop messing with it. People are happy with what they have. On the other hand, for the people that don't use it, yeah, I guess it's nice to have a patch every now and then to try and fix bugs and stuff.
So as a person who hasn't modded, so I modded Skyrim. I've modded Skyrim heavily. We've both done that.
Yeah.
We go back to that game over and over again. I've never modded Fallout 4. I know it's the same basic thing, right? And there's a lot of fun to be had there. I intend to go through and play a modded Fallout 4 version at some point in time, but I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
The problem I have with this is it didn't actually add any features that were actually next gen. It didn't like make it better for an architecture or make it like, you know, remastered for being able to like have better fidelity or something like that. It added some creation content stuff, a couple of patches to like fix a few things that were broken originally in the game that the community had already mostly fixed except for one thing. And everything else was just them just calling it a next gen update. At least with Skyrim Special Edition, it actually added some new stuff to the game.
Well, yeah, when it went to like Anniversary Edition
and stuff like that is just the same thing as this, but this is not a next gen update.
Yeah, the naming is probably a little misconceptive, but I think, in all honesty, I think the reason they name it things like that is because they know they get so much pushback every time they want to update.
Yeah,
they get so much crap because the people who have modded setups always end up getting broken.
Well, but those are your customers that are still doing this stuff, that are still playing these games. The people that are diehard fans of it and want to like mod it. And this is a great game. Like Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 are great games. They are not the first 3 games. They are not New Vegas. But they're still really good games. They're not bad games.
Yeah.
And people love them and they want to play them. Quit messing with them. You know, like Bethesda, come on. We love you. You make these buggy piles of mess that we end up falling in love with, and then we mod the crap out of to do all sorts of great stuff. I don't care if you release it on Switch. Do that. That's fine. I don't care if you release it on the new PS5 or PS6 or whatever.
Yeah.
Do that. That's fine. We'll enjoy that. Release a remastered edition that we can have separate save files for and everything like that. Just stop messing with the original game. You know?
Yeah. You know, I'll give you that. I'll say probably the happy middle is there should be somewhere that you can get access to like update files before the actual update.
Yeah.
Like if you gave the modding community a 1 month heads up, this would never be a problem again.
Yeah, because
they go ahead and make a new version
switch
of the
the flags,
extender.
be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's a lot. That's asking you to put your material out before it's published, and that could you also answer this by Steam and places like that letting you pause updates so you don't have to get them? I mean, probably there's a couple different ways you could skin that cat but you're right. It is a tough situation to be in for everybody, especially the people who are just trying to play the game they bought.
Yeah, and it's a 14-year-old game. I mean, come on, like,
is it really that old?
Yeah, it came out in like 2012.
No, well, okay,
2010, 2012, something like that.
Because Skyrim came out 2011.
Skyrim came out in 2008, I thought.
No,
is it 2011?
It was 11.
That's right.
Yeah, so it came out like 2013 or 14, I thought.
Yeah, but still, that's
still, it's still 10 years old. But it's not quite.
Still 13, 14 years old.
Well, no, if it was 2014, that'd be 10 years.
I don't think it came out in 2014, though.
It was somewhere around there.
I'm going to look it up right now. Fallout 4 release date. You might be right. I could totally... Came out in 2015. I was totally wrong.
Deceptive.
For some reason, I thought it came out in like 2013 or whatever.
It's because they kept releasing Skyrim.
Yeah.
That, like, there was always a new Skyrim to think about.
Well, no, like Skyrim came out in 2011, and I thought it came out like the next. So, all right, follow me back here. For some reason, 2008. That's when Skyrim was announced.
Probably.
That is what always sticks in my mind as when it was released. So 2008, and it was released 3 years later. I always think that Fallout, which was released 3 years after Skyrim, was released 3 years after 2008. So I think it's like 2010, 2011. All right, so I was wrong. It wasn't 14 years ago. It was still 10 years ago. Still, that is ancient for a video game. Like, people have played it and moved on.
Yeah, definitely. There's not a lot of people buying a new. Well, actually, there are, and I think that's the problem.
Yes, there are.
That's probably why they updated it, is because the show's made it more popular.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, The Witcher 3 got updated to add content to it, and that caused some problems for their next gen update that included stuff like that. All right, before we're done, so to wrap that up, Ricky's going to try this beer again now that it's warmed up. Before we're done, though, I'm just saying, Fallout 4, now that the Fallout game's out, fun game to play, not as good as Fallout 1 or 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Fallout 1 and 2 are a particular type of game. If you like that type of game, they're amazing. If you don't, they're not. And I think that's the big improvement with 3, is that 3 made it a lot more modern in terms of accessibility. But I will say this for the beer, it does brighten up a bit.
It does.
I don't think I like it any more than I did before, but it is certainly brighter.
I wouldn't expect that, although I do get some of those stone fruit flavors in it now.
Yeah, I can taste a little bit more sweetness in it. Still not very much. Then, maybe now instead of 100% cocoa powder, it's actually just like 90 cocoa chocolate. Like, you can taste there's a little bit more to it, but it is, in my opinion, a little bit better warm up. But it's still not something I'd probably drink again.
I will go to it every time.
There you go. Enjoy it. Love it.
All right. So this has been season 7, episode 6 of the Beer and Broadband podcast. It's coming out on May 6th, 2024. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.